but okay, that's fine. I
But
think we.
there's nothing, there's not an idea. It's not some thing in
It isn't
someone's head.
okay. So the material value of reproducing something, what that means is you have the legal right to stop someone from making a use of their own property without permission. That's what you mean.
And
That's what it comes down to. So
we'll
you
get to
haven't.
that, because
Well,
ultimately you're talking about, yes. So we're getting to the root of it, which is, if it is a material property of material value, then so you can disagree with that. But if it is a material value, then you have, the burden of proof is to show why is it so different from something else. If you
no,
can
no,
protect
no. I
one, then
disagree. The burden of proof is not to show why it's different. The burden of proof is to show why your use of force is justified. That's the
yes.
ultimate burden of proof.
Well,
Because we're
so
talking ultimately about what laws are justified, correct? Wouldn't you agree with that?
not
What laws
necessarily.
are justified?
I'm getting to the moral concept. We haven't
Yeah,
got to law
but
yet.
laws are based upon morals, right? So the ultimate question is, which laws and legal system do you think is justified? Not. That's the ultimate question here, which is
I,
why it redounds to a question about material values, because laws only affect material things. And you know why? Because laws are only enforced by physical force applied by government goons and courts against physical property. So it's always a question about who owns which material resource, even though you want to say it's not, I mean, you want to change the definition, talk about material values and blah, blah, blah. It's all the legal question is always a question of which law is justified. So that's our dispute here. Is which law, like, if you're saying I'm wrong in saying IP law should be abolished, you're saying there should be an IP law. So you're saying there should be a law.
but what I'm
But
saying is that IP is moral, and so if it's moral, then we can talk. So that's what I'm here to talk about today.
yeah,
We can talk about, so
no, no, no. Hold on a second. Hold on. Let me back up a second, because I think we're getting a little bit. I've given you enough on this stuff. I think. I mean, you could say it's immoral to, watch pornography all day long. But I assume, as a Randian, you wouldn't say that there should be a law outlawing pornography, correct?
I'm not at all talking about
No,
outlawing
no, no.
things like that.
Give me a second. Just give me a little leeway here, Your Honor. I mean, you would say that you know, being indolent, or there's lots of things that you shouldn't do morally that we all can agree to. You shouldn't be dishonest. You shouldn't be lazy. You shouldn't be indolent. You shouldn't be a cad. But you shouldn't do drugs. Maybe you shouldn't be a cocaine addict, right? But I assume you're against the drug war, right?
Yes,
You
I
don't
am.
think that the government has the right to make it illegal to take to buy cocaine or marijuana, right?
I completely agree with you. I think that there is no
Okay,
justification for that.
so the moral and the legal are not the same realm of analysis.
No, the point is not that. So when we're talking about, is something is a material value.
Oh,
Okay.
Jesus.
Well,
What does that? What does that mean? I mean, you
I
haven't
just
defined what you mean by material value yet. What
I
does it mean?
just it's
Something
the
is a material value.
it's a thing in the world
You
that a
mean you
man.
mean the right to get profit, which is
No,
again, as I said
no,
earlier, Marxian.
I'm not making that point. So please don't put words in my mouth. I'm not talking about profit. I'm saying specifically that John Galt has created a material value, which
No,
is
he hasn't. He hasn't created a material value.
he,
He has come up with a way to organize his material matter that better serves him, and he
uh,
can maybe sell instances of it, but he hasn't created a material value. That's just a conceptual way of formatting it that
no,
lets you smuggle in.
the material value is in that the reproducing part of it. So when you talk in some of your lectures that the internet is a giant copying machine or something like that,
Yeah,
therefore,
yeah, yeah.
I'm actually going exactly to that point, is that
Okay.
the material value that John Galt has, because it didn't exist before he invented this. So he did something, a combination of mental and physical actions, and
I agree with you.
as a
Yep.
result of that, there is this this uh, thing that he is able to reproduce, and he's now able to make as many copies of that as he wants to make.
Wait,
Uh,
hold on. Everyone else is able to make copies too.
that's exactly the point. Is that who should, because if it's a material value, then
If
the
what's a wait, if what's a material value?
the the reproduction of that is the material
The
value.
reproduction right?
Well, we are talking first about the value. From the value, because as I said earlier, there's a hierarchy here. You start with the value, which establishes the context. From there, you get to, it's a property. If it's a material value that has been created by man for his use in his life, then it's a material value. I mean,
But you
it's,
haven't defined so what does property mean for you?
I just defined it in a few minutes ago, but I'll happily restate it. So
Yeah.
a property is any material value that's created and used by someone.
Yeah, but property, you told me earlier, property is a normative concept, right? So like it's what the law should protect with the
Yes,
use of physical force, correct?
no,
This is physical material force.
we're still talking morality here. The normative is morality. Uh,
Well, if you're telling me that it's immoral for me to copy someone okay, if someone comes up with like let's give a concrete example. There's a taxi cab monopoly which sucks, and this guy uh, comes up with Uber. So Uber now is a new way of doing ride sharing, which undermines the taxi cab monopoly. So if you're saying it's immoral for me to take that concept, that material value, whatever you want to call it, and do Lyft as a competitor, if you think it's immoral to compete, I disagree with you. But even if it's immoral to compete, it shouldn't be illegal.
so the specifics of we can get into some cases. I don't know the complexities of what is protected. So there's a whole aspect of legal philosophy that should look at what is moral, and then induce from that what is protectable, what should be
Yeah.
secured.
Okay, that's fine, but you keep evading the final point is ultimately what we agree is. So let's see what we agree on. Do you agree that there can be, I mean, there's all these reasons you gave, which by the way, I largely agree with. Intellectual combined with physical, everything. The unity of the mind and spirit.
Body.
I can own a home, I can own a car, I can own a factory, I can own my body. You agree with all that, I assume. You think that the law should protect property rights in physical property that people acquire by homesteading or by contracting. Do you agree with that or not?
So I agree that, and I would actually add to what you said and say even those concepts of property are have a significant intellectual part of it. And so
I don't disagree, by the way. I
okay,
never said they didn't. I'm
so
just
so
saying what we agree with, what we agree on. Do
so
you agree with that
I
someone
do.
can own a home?
I totally agree with that. I would say I would even look at it from a more fundamental level, and once you understand that there's an intellectual component in that as well. Same with the intellectual component that about reproducing it is also an intellectual thing. It's more intellectual and less physical, but it's still about the things in the world. It's about how many of these things
Okay.
can I make. So it's not by any means different. It's it's conceptually it's in a continuum where it's got more intellectual
Okay.
or less intellectual. Like that's the point I'm making.
That's fine, but
So even a bag
do,
of corn that you harvest, there's an intellectual component that went into all of that, the thinking, the
that's
planning,
fine.
etc.
Yes, of course, of course.
So if you accept that,
We're not robots. I mean, we're not animals. But yeah,
so
we don't act without intellect. Of
so
course, we know
so, so
this.
then so to discount the mind when you say
We're not discounting it. We're
so
just counting the part that matters. I mean,
so no
we're
no, but
saying
I'm saying that you cannot just say a man owns his body, because a man owns his body and his mind.
no,
So
no. I disagree with that. You don't
okay,
own your mind. Why do you say you own your mind?
well,
You haven't defined the term ownership. I mean, what do you mean by ownership and property rights?
we're getting off topic a little.
No, we're not. This is the topic, is what the law should cover. And
No,
the
but
law is a physical thing.
the law is what you first get your morality and your ethics right, and then you say, now
Well,
let's.
we already have a shared morality and ethics. We already agree on these things.
But I'm trying to get to a critical point of difference
But you
in
but
our.
you just said you own your mind. I'm
No,
asking you, what does that even mean as a
we,
statement?
that will take us in a tangent. What I'm asking
It's
you
not a tangent. This
to
is the
fo-
root of your IP delusions.
well, I will say, you own your mind, you own the products of your mind, and all of that.
But
So,
how can you wait, okay. So but how can you own your mind, much less the product? What does it mean to own your mind? Tell me what that means. This is, I think, the root of our disagreement.
it's not actually, but we can discover that
Well, in my view, it is. I mean, I disagree with you. So I mean, how can you say what are the
what I'm saying is
you think we
you
own our
disagree.
minds? I don't think we own our minds.
The point of disagreement here is actually that you think that that an inventor's um, material value that includes
No,
please let me finish. Includes the making copies, the copies of that, not making them necessary, but the the value represented in the reproduction. You're saying that is not something that is material value, and I'm saying it
no,
is.
no, no. The problem is I don't think this concept of material value makes any sense in the first place. That's the problem.
But
This is the
that's
root.
because you hold a scarcity view of property, and I'm saying.
No, no, it's because I think Ayn Rand misidentified, like, value is not a noun, okay? It's an act, it's a verb. You demonstrate that you value something by acting to gain and or keep it, okay? But something is not of value. This is the fundamental problem. Ayn Rand was she cross-pollinated different categories. She's correct that, yeah, we have to have an intellectual component to action. To succeed, you have to have a mind, you have to have ideas, you have to have knowledge, you have to have creativity.
And
But
then
that
you and
doesn't
then you have
mean,
to and then you have to produce material values, because
no, no,
you don't.
you don't produce material. That's the problem. You don't produce values.
So is
Values are not produced. What you
well,
produce is you transform. Even Ayn Rand recognized this. She said that you take input factors, which are material things, and you rearrange them. You make them into a more valuable configuration. That's not a new thing in the world. This is ontology squared. I mean, this is like going crazy with ontology. You're not producing things that you own. This is like just a loose, you can't just combine these categories so willy-nilly. I mean, you, you tell me you disagree with me. Like, I say I want to abolish patent and copyright law. Okay, so apparently you disagree with me.
yes.
Does that mean that you favor patent and copyright law? And that is what all IP rights are? Or are there more that we should have? Well,
I favor securing all material values, and I recognize intellectual property as a material value, and that's actually where our the fundamental disagreement is.
so you think we should extend IP law to fashion rights and perfume rights and things that are not yet covered? I mean, is there no end to your? I mean, you understand this would kill the human. If we had the Spooner Ayn Rand infinite copyright idea, the human race would literally die. You understand that?
There's no infinite copyright, so I would
Oh,
push back
well,
on
well,
that.
I totally disagree with you. Even
No,
though you're a more reasonable Randian, there are some Randians who believe in infinite perpetual copyright, and they're Lysander Spooner, J. Neil Schulman, Alexander Galambos, all these other the guys that take Ayn Rand's idea seriously believe in infinite perpetual copyright terms,
well,
which
Lysander Spooner
we would
predates
literally die.
Lysander Spooner predates Ayn Rand. And anyway, the point is, if you read Rand's 64 essay on patents and copyright, it's a 5-page essay, so it's not a very big
Yeah,
essay.
yeah,
No, the three
okay,
and a half pages of that are about term limits on
yeah,
copyright.
but she has
There's
no.
no.
But my point is, if you believe it's a natural property right, then you either have to believe it lasts forever, or it lasts for a temporary term. Now, I cannot believe you, as an intelligent human being, having read that, think that she has a good argument for defining and circumscribing what this temporary term should be. All
Yes,
she has is muttered phrases about, oh, well, you shouldn't be able to live forever upon your ancestors' effort. I mean, it's just bullshit. It's like nothing principled whatsoever. She recognizes that if she favored a perpetual copyright term, it would kill the human race. So she opposes that. But she doesn't want to go to zero. So she's somewhere in between. That's all she knows. There is no
but
principled.
you missed a key part of that essay, which I know you read because you referenced it in other things. So this is why I made the point about static values and dynamic values. So, and there's a the difference between the a car that Bernie Sanders bought from John Galt. That's a static value. All the value in that
Oh, for
is
God's
is,
sake.
is
Wait.
represent.
So your argument is that if Bernie Sanders buys a car, there's a difference between that and what?
Please let me. I didn't complete making my point, but
Go ahead.
the,
Go
the,
ahead.
the difference between static value and dynamic value, which is mentioned in that essay, it's only a couple of paragraphs, but it's a very critical point that I think it's really worth thinking about. And you know, you're a brilliant person, so you think about this, you'll get this too. That that there are two different types of values, and each establish its own context. The car is a all of its value is represented at the time it is created.
No. Hold on. A car doesn't
I,
have a
I
value. We both agree nothing has intrinsic value, right? So you can't say
no the,
all of its value. Nothing has a value.
all
Nothing has a value.
so let's say Bernie Sanders values transportation, and he buys
Okay.
he buys a car, and he says, so all
Well,
that,
he does. Well, hold on. Again, there he doesn't value the car just for transportation.
whatever it
He
is,
might he might have he might have 10,000 different reasons why he
for
values
whatever
the car.
but all of those exist at the time that
Nothing. They don't exist.
no
Okay, but go,
the value represented to Bernie Sanders. Again, value always requires a valuer. This is a
there
very
is no value. You're thinking you're an intrinsicist
no,
basically.
no, no, not at all.
There is no value.
The
There is no
value,
value.
the value is a conceptual thing which Bernie Sanders has. He says,
It explains why he does something. That's all. It's the Austrian concept of subjective value preference. It demonstrated preference. People value something, therefore they act to, as Rand would say, to gain and or to keep it. But it does. It is not of value.
you,
This is
you,
the problem with
you
the
have to,
Randians. Is
you have to let me finish my, my,
all right.
my, my, my point there. And
Well, I don't know. You've been going on along. I can interject a little bit,
no,
right?
no, please interject. But when you ask something, then at least let me finish the train of thought, and then
Go
feel free
ahead.
to
Go
jump in.
ahead. Go ahead.
So the and I don't buy into this the Austrian concept of value in that sense, but the value that Bernie Sanders, the valuer, has some notion that of what he and all of that exists at because he's getting all that in one shot. There's no and that value all he has to do is maintain it. He doesn't have to create that.
Well,
The
I
in
thought you said things are dynamic. They're not static. So
no no but
maintain what? There's
he
no
has to
value. It
he has
doesn't
to he
exist.
has to change
I
the
don't.
oil. He has to do whatever. He has to do
Oh yeah, he has to. Yeah, I agree. He has to maintain the object he owns. I agree.
exactly. And this would apply to a house. It would apply. Those are tangible things. So those are static values.
But it's not a value. It's a car.
But it is the value of transportation, or he wants to use it as a
No,
taxi cab,
he
whatever.
values it. It's not of value. This is the problem with Rand. You think of it as a noun. Again, I mean, I'm not
It,
trying to I'm not trying to win you over by semantics, but do you understand what I'm saying? Because you keep saying it's of value, like you're using it as a noun. It is not of value. It is a thing. It's a
so
material object in the world that he has a property right in.
yes.
It's
So
not of value. He might value it, but it is not of value. You keep saying it's of value because you want to reverse engineer a property right on top of it, but it's not of value.
the point is that it is. So I think you're missing the inductive process I walked through. But that's okay. It's your prerogative to do that. What I'm saying is that there are two types of things going on here, because we started this about why is there a time limit, and now we got a little bit off topic. What I'm saying is
No,
that
no, actually, I didn't. I don't think
you asked
that.
the question
No,
about time limit.
that's your dilemma actually, because you favor something that's in between impossible and impossible. You know, in your view,
I
zero
don't
is
I don't
impossible,
I don't
infinity is
understand that.
impossible. Well, because you think there has to be something in between two impossible opposites. So
But
that means you have
that's
to.
not where I'm coming from. My point is
It
that
doesn't matter where you're coming from. You actually have to favor a finite term limit, and you have to come up with an
but
arbitrary number which is not objective,
when you're
right? Which
talking
is
about
contra.
the moral uh, principle here, then it does matter. So if we don't get this right, then the law is meaningless. We have to
Why
get
don't you
this.
why don't you tell me what you're in favor? I mean, you still haven't told me. So, like, I oppose patent and copyright law. I think there are many problems with each law. Okay, the terms, the finiteness, the definitions, the domains, the scope, the constitutionality, whatever. Now you basically oppose that in some general form. You favor IP law. You still haven't told. All you can say is you favor property rights and material values, which I don't know what that means. So what is the statute? I assume you probably don't want to agree to this, but you probably would agree we should abolish the Patent Act and the Copyright Act and replace it with an objectivist IP statute that more rationally embodies the material values that we have property rights in. So my question is, what the fuck is that?
So I
What are you proposing?
I'm
What are
here
you
to
in favor of?
I'm here to first address a question: is it moral or is it not?
What?
If it is immoral, if IP is immoral, then I would join you in abolishing everything. But I believe that IP is moral, and then we get to legal philosophy. We induce all of these. We can look at laws, we can look at statutes, we can induce, is this law working in the context that it was
Yeah,
applied?
yeah, but yeah, how? But Ayn Rand in that essay, she actually endorsed the Patent Act and the Copyright Act. So I'm asking you, do you endorse it? Do you agree with her or not?
Ayn Rand is not a lawyer, and neither am I.
Well,
So
but she should have kept her mouth shut, but she didn't.
the,
So
the,
do you
the
agree
point
with her or not?
the point is not about a particular minute fact of law. If
It's
as
not
I said,
minute. The patent and copyright laws are extremely influential and they cause devastating damage, which you support because I don't know why you support it.
so
They're horrible. They're not liberal laws. These are not property rights.
so the point is, if something is moral, then you have to figure out how to encode it, or whatever the word is, into law. And if you can make mistakes along the way, but you need, and those need to be fixed. The point first to decide, if is it moral. If it's
Well,
immoral,
well, hold on a second. Would you say, like, okay, pornography is immoral, therefore we need to find a way to make it illegal? I mean,
I'm not saying pornography is immoral.
well, what about abusing yourself with drugs and being a drug addict? Do you think that's immoral?
uh, I would say that it's people have the right to do what they want. I would say that they
Yeah,
are
but that's a legal thing. I
okay.
think it's immoral to destroy your life for no reason. Okay,
I,
by being an addict to cocaine.
but
It's immoral to, like, be obsessed with pornography and to, like, be rude to your grandmother. Okay, all these things are immoral, but does that mean we need to turn our task to finding a way to make it illegal?
but if something is moral, you should defend it. That's the point. You should defend it, and if it requires,
Yeah.
so here's my point. If intellectual property is is as much about material values as tangible property, then it's deserving of the same. It needs to be secured to the same extent as physical property, and that's my point. Is actually which I didn't quite get to. It was sort of the last thing I wanted to say is really this, and then you can. So if the root of all property is intellectual, then all rights that secure material values must be protected. And so, if you the case, my point is that the case for IP rights are morally sound. In fact, it is the same material value oriented case for all property rights. The left has been attacking both with
But they
deadly
have,
effect.
but they haven't.
The libertarian attack on IP rights, supposedly to protect property rights, plays into their hands. That's sort of my
Yeah.
summation.
No,
Now,
I got it. But
yeah,
the problem is that the left hasn't been attacking IP rights. The left is actually worse on IP rights in a way than the right.
Kamala
Um,
Harris wanted to take the. She said, "We will take your patents."
no, no,
She's
that's actually not true. Tell
well,
me what you're thinking of.
during her presidential campaign, which didn't go very far, although she is now a vice president, she was asked about drugs and
Yep.
pharmaceuticals,
Right, right,
and
right.
she said that she would quote unquote take their patents.
Well, what she meant was, so the state, the federal government grants these patent monopolies, and part of that statute includes the right for the federal government to withdraw them or to grant a temporary withdrawal called, or a partial withdrawal called a compulsory monopoly, a compulsory license, sorry. So in other words, when the state gives you the ability to use a court right to stop your competitors, the state can step in and manipulate that. This is fascism. It's pure fascism.
But
So
the difference is that the state is not giving you anything,
no,
no
no,
more than
you're
the
no,
state.
no,
The state secures your right. It does not give you
no.
anything.
Listen, this is the Randian view of things, but I'm telling you the
But
legal reality.
calling it Randian doesn't make it wrong
No,
because
no. The
your right to your
no,
house
I'm not.
is
I'm not trying to say it's wrong because it's Randy. What I'm saying is your conception of this is not correct. The the state, without the federal government patent act, there would be no patent rights. You understand that? It's not a natural.
similarly without
No,
the
no,
state
that's not true.
protecting your rights to your
That's
property.
why I asked you if you're an anarchist earlier. So you're not an anarchist, so you won't understand this. But no, that's it's not similar. But that's beside the point. My point is,
Let's have a separate discussion about the role of government, if you like. But
we can. But my point is that the patent act that Ayn Rand favored and that you seem to favor specifically says that the state grants these monopoly privileges, but the state can withhold them in certain cases. And that is not a taking of property rights like Ayn Rand portrayed in Atlas Shrugged, because she was, I'm not criticizing her for this. She was ignorant of the way the patent law worked. But when the state grants a compulsory license, that is not a taking, is simply not a taking of property rights. It's simply the state slightly withdrawing a monopoly privilege that they granted previously. That's all it is. It's not a taking of property rights.
but
And
you keep using the word this granting of monopoly. The fact is,
that's what it is.
but I mean, we can get into a lot of detail here.
Hold on. You have to understand and agree that there can be no patent law without a statute. You understand that?
I
That
would say
this
that there's a securing of the property right. All property rights they only exist when they're secured.
no,
There's no property right intrinsic. It only comes into existence when it is secured. This applies to tangible
I agree.
property. It applies to intellectual property. So we can go into the history and say they were monopoly grants.
No, it's not just the history.
The
It's the
American
no.
system the American system changed
It's not
a
the
lot of
American.
that.
It's the entire world. It's like this is the nature of these things. If you understand the way law develops, the way natural law works, the way our process works, you understand some things can only come about by artificial state legislation. Okay. By the way, I've argued with some Randians on this, and they concede this point, like Murray Frank, Ayn Rand's lawyer.
So here I'll tell you what I will concede, that a government, a rights protecting government, is a value in my life.
That's fine, but that doesn't mean they need to have legislation to make law.
But the point
You
is,
can still have law emerge organically by natural common law principles, right?
the problem is that when you begin with scarcity, then you have this concept that you could have a right without the securing of that right. And I think that's an error that comes from a superficial view of property. The view I presented actually gets to the root of it. And because rights don't exist, this is exactly, you said I was being intrinsicist, not at all. The fact remains that if if the right only exists when it is secured, we can talk about what's the best way to secure it. That's where the laws come in and the enforcement and all that. But unless there's something securing the material values to individuals, there is no such thing as a right. So I think the anarchist libertarians, they want to have their rights, but because they don't think government is bad, in a way, this is sort of like a proxy war. They don't like government, but they want the rights, and they think that they can have one without the other. And my point is that you really can't do that. So if there's no
Right.
securing of a right, it doesn't exist because there's no intrinsicist view of rights.
Yeah, yeah, but like you said, that's another debate. I mean, let me try one more thing before we. I think we probably have to close now. We can have part 2 or 3 if you want. I don't mind. You've been very surprisingly reasonable given your background. Okay,
Thank
I
you.
mean, I don't mean to do a backhanded compliment. I mean, you understand I deal with lots of pro IP and objectivist types who are completely unfair.
Are you
Um,
familiar with the case that I made in sort of the more the fundamentality of it? I mean, I know you're familiar with Ayn Rand, but I think that this is a part of the case that is missed by a lot of people. Again, it takes a little detailed digging to arrive at what that material value is. It's it's different, but because everything is contextual, you have to understand each one existing in its context, in which case both the limitations on it and the sphere that it secures are different. And that, but that's true of all rights.
I guess I'm not sure. What's your question? Am I familiar with what?
With the case that I presented,
You mean just now, or like other somewhere else?
well, through the better part of this morning,
Oh yeah, yeah.
afternoon.
Yeah. Believe me, yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to insult you, but nothing you said is new to me. I mean, I've heard all this, and I appreciate 75% of it. I mean, it's like you keep dancing around the issue, like you keep saying, oh well, we have to do philosophy first. That's all fine, but ultimately, if you disagree with me on what the law is, then ultimately we have to have a political component to our views.
May I suggest that there are probably people who are trained in the law and objectivism, and I'll be happy to introduce you to a couple of people that
No,
you
no,
can
no, no,
talk to.
no, no, no. That's not the issue. That's not what I mean.
But I'm not a lawyer, so I don't. If I start
No,
talking about,
and I'm trying not to drop. I'm not trying to drop legal authority because this is actually what your side does more than mine. By the way, I'm not doing that at all.
and I haven't done
I
it.
am
I haven't done
no
it.
you no, you don't do it. Actually a patent lawyer. I could like bamboozle you with legal bullshit that you would
And
never know.
I appreciate you're not doing
I'm
that.
simply saying that if you think I'm wrong in saying we should abolish patent and copyright, you must think there should be an IP law, which you seem to think there is. But when you keep it, this is what I brought up in the very beginning. When you keep it general and you say, okay, I think that there should be a role for the law to support the intellectual products of the mind because they're material values that we produce, blah, blah, blah. We need them to survive, blah, blah, blah. That's all fine as a general matter. But when it comes down to concrete details, like, okay, so what legal right system are you proposing? And if you say, well, I don't know, I'm not a legal specialist, it's like, well, then I don't know what we're disagreeing about. And by the way, every time I could mention 100 different examples of things I'm confident that you and your compatriots would agree with, like, okay, the law should not prohibit this. This example of the application of copyright law is outrageous. You probably would agree with me on everything there. So all that means is every time position of knowledge, I point out something to you that's like an example of why these unjust laws result in unjust consequences. You say I agree, but that's not what I favor. So finally, I got to say, well, then what do you favor? You say, well, I'm not a specialist. I'm like, well, then I don't know where dissipate. So
Well, because
if you just favor some, go ahead.
today's topic is a moral case for IP law and IP rights, and I believe
Yeah,
I've
but
made the
law is
moral
not
case now.
moral.
No, well, so that's where we have to. So when we're talking
I mean,
about the
law is
way,
not only moral. I mean, law you have to get to actually where you think that the use of force by the institution of society, whether it's a state or private, whatever, like the legal force of the institution, where that can be legitimately and justifiably used, that's the question. And Ayn Rand herself was good on this. She says, do you hear me? You cannot start the use of force against someone who hasn't used force. Ayn Rand herself said, we don't create things from nothing. We only rearrange matter. I can send you the quotes.
no,
Ayn Rand said this.
no, I've heard that, and actually, I think you misuse that because you're conflating value creation with creating matter. There's no
Exactly.
no, but there's no
Exactly. But the law
but
only applies to the latter. So I agree with Rand. If you want to
uh-uh,
say we create values, yeah.
not so at all, because material values are really what a farm is a material
Okay,
value,
okay, but you still
and
haven't defined material value. You
I,
keep saying values, and
I
I
spent I
disagree with
spent
your use of that as a noun.
I spent some time detailing that
Okay,
material
let me
values
ask you a question.
are the
What's the difference between a material value and a non-material value? Tell me what the difference is. What does the word material add?
material is a thing in the world. So that's as
And
clear
that's
as
the
I
thing
can
that
make it.
property rights apply to, correct?
Yes, and I'm saying
Those are the scarce means of action, correct?
no, I don't start from scarcity, but I'm saying that
I'm not
material.
starting from anywhere. I'm just
I'm just
making an
saying
observation
I'm saying that
because
material values are scarce, yes, but they have scarcity is in my mind just an
okay,
invalid
so
concept.
if I have a shovel, is that a material value or is it a shovel? Which one is it?
It is a shovel is a material value to someone who's trying to dig a hole.
Okay, if I
So
have an iPhone, is that a material value?
yes, it is.
Okay, so you're using the word material value to refer to scarce resources that people value.
I'm saying that material values are scarce because human cognition itself is scarce, but and it takes all of that to
No, no,
make
no.
those things.
Hold on. What do you mean by the assertion human cognition is scarce? Because I completely disagree with that. Because scarcity to me is a completely political economic concept, which means that there is a resource which we can employ as a means of action over which there can be physical, material, violent conflict. That's what I mean by scarcity. It's the economic concept of rivalrousness. So I don't know what you mean by scarcity applies to human cognition or something like that. What does that
No,
mean?
I just think that scarcity is an improperly integrated way of look. There's nothing normative. So you're making actually an assumption that scarcity is sort of a normative baseline.
No,
And
I never said it's normative.
well,
But Ayn Rand herself said,
because
"Wait, hold on."
property is a normative ethical concept. In fact, to just
Yes.
complete the point I wasn't able to make before, the, in law trying to make ethical things into our bring them into our politics. That's what politics is, an application is an attempt to apply ethics to a social context. So when but you have to get the right baseline. If scarcity is normative in your sense, then then,
I
then
never said.
yes,
Hold on. I never said scarcity is normative. But by the way, just as a background for you, I personally adhere to the philosophical views of the Neo-Randians, Rasmussen and Denoyle. I don't know if you read them, but in their view, the idea behind law is what they would call metanormative. In other words, the ethical norms that apply to law and what law should exist are meta norms in the sense that we're trying to identify the principles that justify the laws. So, for example, if I say I have a property right, I don't know, in my car, it doesn't mean that it's moral for me to use it to, not let my mother-in-law use it to go to the hospital or something like that. Like that could be immoral. So there is a distinction between personal morals, or put it this way, if I violate someone's property rights, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's immoral personally. What it means is that it's moral for us as a society to have a law that justifies and that enforces a certain legal principle.
I
Like
think
so,
that is unnecessarily collectivist in nature. It's better to start from a more fundamental premise. So that's why I say it's not as
well,
though
hold on. They do start from it. I mean, you say it. I
well,
mean, you haven't read it apparently. I mean,
no,
they don't.
I
They
haven't
start.
read
They
that
start from.
particular
They
book.
start from Randian Aristotelian fundamentals. They start from whatever. I'm simply saying the analysis of, like, would you say that it's always immoral to violate a right? I'm asking you that as a question.
Is it always immoral to? I mean, yes,
Like, do you think of rights as a subset? Do you think of rights as a subset of morals,
I think
a proper a proper
right,
subset?
rights come from ethics, and it, and if we define them correctly, then for example, the right to life. If you interfere with that, then it is immoral, and fortunately, in our society, illegal as well.
Okay, but I'm sure we could both envision scenarios where you need to violate someone's rights, and to fail to do so would actually be immoral. Like if you're trapped in the woods and your baby's starving and you can break into an empty cabin and steal a can of beans to save your baby's life, you could say that should be illegal and it's a violation of property rights, but it's not immoral to do so.
You know,
But by the
I would
same,
actually point you to an interesting essay, "The Ethics of Emergencies," that Rand wrote. But we're getting
no,
off
I know,
topic.
I no,
Yeah,
I agree. I agree that people overuse this emergency thing, but I'm simply saying that the domain of political ethics is distinct from the domain of ethics. Just like, for example, if you're, cruel to your grandmother for no reason, that's immoral, but it's not a rights violation. Like it's everything that's immoral is not illegal. All I'm saying is everything that's illegal is not necessarily immoral either.
the,
I'm
the, the,
saying they overlap, but they're not proper subsets of each other.
I think we are getting a little bit off topic here because
We are.
we were
That's how
talking.
that's how I roll.
Well, and I appreciate that. So if we, I'd love to actually, meet you in person and have a much longer discussion whenever you'd like to do that. But the point I was trying to get to is that with scarcity, so there is a kernel of truth. There's a fact in the world, as Rand would say, there are tangible things in the world that can't be used, differently at the same time. No man can plow, two men can't plow the same furrow and all that stuff. So, but this doesn't tell you anything about whether scarcity itself, this idea of rivalrous exclusive use of something, whether that should be a normative baseline for defining what counts as property. That it doesn't set that stage at all. So it sounds like it does, and it's very easy to accept if you don't want to think at the level of values. So that's why it's very popular, and especially if you want to be an economist, but you don't want to think about ethics, then you can just make it all about scarcity, because that's the way they would like to frame it. But it it the this is why the problem arises with scarcity. While it's real, the connect making it a normative ideal, that's the problem. Sorry, was I muted? I can't hear you, Stephan. I can't hear you. Nope, can't hear you yet. Nope. I can see you're saying something, but there's no audio. Nope. I think I can. Can you say something now? It's very poor audio quality. It's almost. Nope, sorry. Okay, let's pause recording.
Okay, microphone. I told you my microphone's going to run out of power.
That just means
I've
we're
got the-
having an interesting conversation. That
I know. I had this Jabra and it's like 13 hours, but I didn't charge it, so it had 2 hours left and we ran out. Anyway,
no
sorry.
problem.
Go
So
ahead. I forgot where we were. Go ahead.
so I was saying that scarcity is real. There's a kernel of truth. It's a fact in the world. So evading it doesn't get us anywhere. But there are tangible things in the world that can't be used at the same time by different people. All that. But
Well, not only that, this is the core of Ayn Rand's assertions about how you can't start the initiation of physical violence. I mean, that's a recognition of the fact that physical violence against physical objects like people's bodies and other things makes a difference.
but not it's the view is not from scarcity. The view is Rand's view about not using force is because it negates or opposes or impedes reason.
It doesn't matter what it's from.
It matters. It matters a great deal. So scarcity, if you're trying to say that scarcity is has a normative concept,
I'm not saying that. I never said that.
but that's what is implied.
I'm saying Ayn Rand's non-aggression principle, which she basically endorsed.
Non-initiation of force principle, which was
Yeah,
codified into non-aggression. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, it implies the recognition of rivalrous resources and the fact of the importance and the necessity of physical violence and when it's justified and when it's not. I mean,
no, but that's a derivative concept.
That's fine, but
it's
unavoidable. It doesn't matter whether it's derivatives; it's unavoidable.
When we're talking fundamentals, it does matter. So if you want to discuss the NAP versus the non-initiation of force principle from which it was derived, I don't know, but ultimately it comes down to
okay.
Force is the opposite of reason. If you decided that if you're going to use force, that means reason is not an option anymore. You can't oppose force with reason. And she has a whole discussion about that. So we have to be careful if we want to talk about.
I agree with all that. I think we should close this, but let me just say one thing, and you can conclude however you want. I think ultimately, you can't just say as a vague, general, abstract matter, okay, we believe in rights, and rights are rights and material values that your intellect creates, and that includes intellectual property rights. But I'm not a legal expert, so I don't know what I'm in favor of. I mean, look, you're a libertarian to some extent in the political realm, so you favor property rights in physical resources being enforced by a physical legal system in the world. I mean, we all do. This is what we agree on, I think.
Yes.
So you can't just say, I mean, we don't have anything to disagree about unless you tell me what you favor or what you don't agree with. So I actually believe that people like you don't want to defend the patent and copyright system because you know it's completely statist and bullshit and full of exceptions or whatever. So you don't really want to defend it, but you don't want to agree with me that it should be abolished because you're afraid to. So you're in between, right? So
no, but you can't. The point is you don't defend every bad law
I agree.
That defends tangible property either. Right?
I agree. I'm simply saying I don't know what we disagree or agree on unless you tell me.
And that's my point.
So I can give you two things. Do you agree with me or not that the patent system and the copyright system should be abolished? That's one way to look at it. And the second question is,
I disagree with that.
Well, but the other thing would be, okay, no, you have this hypothetical IP augmented legal system in mind, which you would favor instead, and tell me what it is, and I'll tell you what's wrong with it. But I don't know what we're disagreeing on unless you specify
But
what legal system we're talking about.
I think we are disagreeing on the morality of IP, and if we disagree on that,
No,
then
we're
then,
not.
then
We're not. We're not, because I don't know what that means. I'm only disagreeing with a legal system that takes property rights away from property owners. That's all I disagree with.
and what I'm saying is that intellectual property represents a form of property,
I
and
don't care what it represents. I'm
but
asking
but no
what legal system do you
but then
favor?
if you're not supporting that, if you're saying that you don't want it to be secured, then you're saying you want tangible property to be secured but intellectual property to not be secured. That's what you're
No,
saying.
no, no. So here's what I'm saying. So
But are you saying that or not? Are you saying that both should be secured, or are you saying that only physical tangible property should be secured?
well, it's not that simple, but I would yeah, if you force me, I would say the latter. Yes. But the reason is because
I'm not forcing you. I'm just asking you to say, but then this is our fundamental disagreement. I think I've made a case where that both are forms of property, and
no, you
and
haven't, because you haven't defined what property is.
oh, I've defined it several times in today. We can go back and roll
Okay,
tape on
okay.
that.
Let me put it this way. I think what I try to do is I try to find what we agree on. I think you agree with me that people own their bodies. Would you agree with that?
I,
Or is
I
that
agree, and I think we own our life. Actually, Rand's
oh,
thing was that she actually had a better formulation. This body thing is a
I know, but I'm
distraction.
I'm trying to find something we agree on. So
Okay.
like we agree that we own our bodies, and you agree that you own, like, if you have a house and land and a car and money and gold, you own those things. Would you
Yes,
agree with
I
okay.
agree with.
Now,
And, and
would you and so therefore, for those reasons, or partly for those reasons, you oppose laws that intrude on those rights, like taxes or the drug war or conscription. Like
yes,
you
I do.
oppose conscription, correct?
I do.
Because it takes your body from you, even though you didn't consent to do something.
It does even more than that. It takes your life from you.
Okay, that's
So
you can metaphorically talk about the harms of it, but
no, I'm saying take the broadest view that you can. Otherwise, you miss certain things. All of these things are essentially doing something to a person's life. To say body
yeah,
is
but to
is
me,
is, is
this is look, literature is fine, but I'm not into literature. But if you want to use literature to emotively describe the harms that come from whatever you don't like, that's fine. I mean, you could say that if you enslave someone, you're stealing their time, but this is not rationally, logically, literally accurate. You're not stealing time because people don't own time. You can
you
describe the harms of slavery by saying you're taking their life from them and your life only exists in time, blah, blah, blah. But this is not metaphorically, literally accurate. The
but
problem with slavery is that you're committing aggression against someone's body. It's not because you're stealing their time.
I would say that when you so this is actually we can have a whole separate discussion on NAP versus NIFP. Which so I would say that you're actually doing a lot more than just so force is not just physical. There are all kinds of force.
Force is literally just physical. That's what force means.
No, not in physics. In the context of morality, what we're talking about.
I mean
So
morality too. Force
okay,
is
then
the manipulation by physical force of material objects that other people
well,
have rights to without their consent. What else can it be?
so coercion, if you want to use that word,
That's the threat of force.
so that's what I'm saying. All of those things are basically uh, opposed to a man's free use of his reason, and that's the most fundamental way to
But
look at those things.
that's just a way of describing the
But it's
consequences of it.
when we're talking about morality, Stefan, these are things that matter. The conceptual identity.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
They do matter. But what I'm like, if you say a guy rapes a girl, okay, you could describe it in 17,000 different ways. He took her autonomy, he insulted her, he ruined her future potential. I mean, you could describe it all kinds of ways, but the ultimate insult is that he used her resource without her permission. her
No,
body.
but at the
That's
root
what the
of it,
law governs.
at the root of it, he said, I'm basically saying your reason that allows you to make choices, I'm taking that away from you.
No, that's not the root of it. So
Oh,
you're
that
looking.
that
You're,
that is
you're
a that is
looking.
a that is the moral root of it. Everything
No,
else
it's
is a
not. But
consequence.
that's fine. But you're trying to go into the motivations for a crime. Like
No,
when
no,
I am when
it's not the motivation. It's what the rapist actually does. Is the rapist said in this transaction, your reason is not applicable.
well, from the point of view of the victim, what the rapist does is he uses her body without her permission.
That is
Right?
true, but
Okay. So that's all that
how,
matters for law for the law.
well, but when we're talking morality, which is what we're talking today,
I'm
then
not
I think
talking morality.
yeah,
I've never I don't know what it means to talk about morality with IP. Are you saying that it's immoral for me to compete with someone by copying their product? Like if
I,
like hold on, when Apple came out with the iPhone, like it was a revolutionary idea to like remember before that you had dumb phones and you had the BlackBerry, and then Apple said let's have a touchpad, which is a little computer, blah blah blah, and that turned into the smartphone industry. Correct?
yeah.
And over time, Android and other companies started competing with Apple by making similar devices. Now, I guess you could come up with an analysis that it was immoral for Motorola and Android or whatever to compete with Apple. And maybe it was. I don't think it was immoral because I'm not a moral expert, but it certainly shouldn't be illegal because competition should be legal. So that's my fundamental problem with you people on this issue, to be honest. Like it should, are you saying that should be illegal? Because Apple came up with the first rounded corners, touchscreen, tiny smartphone computer device, and other people made something similar and competed with them. Are you saying that that is wrong? That should be illegal? Did it violate Apple's rights? That's the fundamental question.
No, so let's abstract it because I don't know the case, and I don't know which case
This
you're
is the
talking.
problem. You won't defend anything.
No, but
Every
I hold on. I'll tell you what I will defend. I will defend that if a patent owner, what a patent owner actually has secured for him.
Apple had a patent on the rounded corners touchscreen smartphone. Okay,
So
let's take that
here's
for
the thing,
granted.
Stephan. The reason why these examples will derail it is because I don't know the case, and so I don't know if the patent was good, bad, indifferent. I'm
Yeah,
just
but let's say it was good. Let's say it was a
yeah,
good
so,
patent.
so let's say you have a good
Do you
patent.
think do you think there could be a good patent on the first use of a touchscreen smartphone? I mean,
So this is Stefan. This is like saying, do you defend the one-click thing from Amazon? I think many of those mistakes are
this is
there.
what I said in the very beginning. Every
No,
time I point to an example, you guys back out and you won't defend it because
I'm
you
not
know it's
backing out.
absurd.
I'm saying that there is a material value in the
Oh,
reproduction of something which has met the standard. Now, what that standard is the job of legal philosophers and lawyers like you to
okay.
figure
Well,
out.
that's me. That's me. And my conclusion is no. So the other guys, by the way, all the other guys are self-serving, so that's fine.
Well, I don't
They're
know
all
who you're talking about. What I'm saying is
all my fellow patent lawyers. Guess they're in favor of the patent system. Hey, it's like my niece who's a public school teacher in Louisiana. Do you think she's against the public school system? No. Guess why? I don't know.
but that's not an argument that's particularly persuasive. That just because someone is either for or against their interests, I don't know. That doesn't really matter. You're against IP, and somehow that's. I think we're getting off track there. I think we were actually getting to a very fundamental point which got sidetracked, which was about
Which I sidetracked. Go ahead and say it. You
no,
can
no.
say it.
It's
I'm
about
good
it's
at
about
that. Go
it's
ahead.
about scarcity. So I was making a larger point. In fact, scarcity comes out of this perfect competition view of economics, and which actually evades a lot of things like values, innovation, etc. And you might also know that scarcity was used by Marxists to actually attack the free market and property rights. Basically, they said, "Oh, there's a scarcity of goods, and it's wrong for capitalists to hoard them. Stealing labor from workers."
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so taking what we are doing, what people who are opposing IP are doing, and on the scarcity premise.
By the way, scarcity doesn't come from this perfect competition model.
No, what I'm saying is that argument made by Marx, instead of challenging the basis of their argument, you're accepting scarcity-oriented property, and then you're trying to show them that, hey, only markets can do it, and only for physical goods.
Okay, so the basis of Marxism is this labor exploitation idea. The idea that the value of a product comes from the labor people put into it, and therefore, when their employer makes a profit, they must be stealing the surplus value of their labor.
And we both disagree with that mindset.
I think so. However, that logic is part of the Lockean idea that when you labor on something like intellectually to create something that's valuable, as you call it, a material value, you have this right to reproduce it or exploit it, which is just another way of saying I have a right to use legal force to stop people from competing with me. Ultimately, I'm not against competition. I'm not against the free market. I'm not against people learning and copying each other. If people choose to make information public in any way, then other people can learn from that and compete with them on that basis. There's no violation of rights when that happens, even though you would like people to be able to economically exploit this mythical right to reproduce something without competition. That requires a legal monopoly, which violates property rights. That's my whole point. It's very simple, and it's rooted in. By the way, lots of Randians agree with me. You understand this. This is not like some people move my way from your side because they realize, okay, Randianism, our property rights principles can't sustain this pro-IP view.
I think I'll point out a fundamental error in what, at least what I think is a fundamental error. So, there is again a kernel of truth. Patents are like monopolies in terms of their effect because there's an exclusion approach, right? But what you're doing is you're saying that wanting to do something, let's say you want to compete with the mousetrap inventor, right? You're wanting to do something per se creates a right. But that's what you're saying.
I know where you're going, and I'm not saying that because I want to do it, it's fine. What I'm saying is
but your example is somebody wants to copy that wanting, and they want to use their physical resources to do it. So
bear with me.
Let me just finish the point. You're conflating also possession with property, and then you're saying that the desire to do something like to copy makes it a right. And none of that is given. None of that is given.
I agree with you that doesn't imply that, but that's not what I'm saying. What I'm doing.
But that's the heart of the root. Your argument against the monopoly.
I'm appealing to what I think we agree with already, which is that property rights are meant to protect the security of your ability to use a resource that you've acquired legitimately somehow, and that if you use the resource in a way that doesn't disturb other people's use of their resources, then you haven't done anything that justifies force being used against you. That's the core of the non-aggression principle, or whatever, however Rand called it.
But there again, you're conflating possession with. So if you own the wood and the metal to make a mousetrap, it doesn't automatically give you the right to build John Galt's mousetrap.
Here's where we disagree then. That you just identified the core of the disagreement. I don't need a right to do whatever the fuck I want with my property. I can manipulate my resources in however I want, as long as I don't invade the borders of others' property. So this is your mistake. You think we have to operate by permission? I don't think so.
No, it's not.
I don't need a right to do anything. I only can be stopped if I'm violating someone's rights. We operate, in my view of the world, the libertarian view of the world, we operate by right, not by permission. We're not living in a totalitarian world where we have to run around getting fucking permission from everyone, getting rights to do things. If I own resources, wood, copper, metal, whatever, I don't need John Galt's permission to do whatever I want with it. That's your mistake.
So if you own a gun and the bullets in the gun, and you decide to shoot somebody, put your bullet into that person's body.
Yeah.
Well, by what you just stated.
No, no, listen, I was very careful what I said. So in that case, it's not my ownership of the gun that is limited. It's my action. My action is invading his property rights. And the reason I can't shoot the gun in his direction is because the ejection of that bullet will go into his property and use his resources without his permission. That's what I don't have the right to do. But my point is, when I fabricate, when I manipulate the resources that I own in my own factory in a certain configuration, unless that trespasses against the borders of John Galt's factory of products, he doesn't have a right to stop me.
See what
Now,
you're doing. What you're doing there again is it's a begging the question.
No, you're begging the. I think you're begging the question. I know what you're saying, but
what you're saying is that right the right to reproducing the mousetrap.
No, I don't have a right to reproduce. I have the right to do anything I want. Don't you understand? I don't have to identify 17,000 different fucking rights with my property. My right is to do whatever I want unless you can stop it. That's all.
You do. So this is what I'm saying. You're conflating possession. You possess the wood and the metal.
No, I'm not conflating anything.
It doesn't. So we're in an area where you're either
no.
You're either infringing on the mousetrap inventor's rights or not. And I'm saying that
there's no such thing as infringing. That's question begging.
Yeah, but that's what you're doing. And I'm saying I have approached it from the point that they're both material values. So I'm not question begging. I've made a case for it. What you're saying is you're saying that you cannot use that possession gives you infinite ability to do something, and I just showed you a case where it doesn't. Which
it's the other way around. It's the other way around. I'm saying that ownership gives you the right to stop people from using your property without their permission. That's all.
And the mousetrap owner owns the right to the reproduction of that. That is his material value. So
that's well, hold on. That's the core question. So the guy that owns wood and steel and he fashions it to make a mousetrap. Let's say a new mousetrap. Okay. Now I think you and I would both agree he owns the wood and the steel that he fashioned it into, right?
Yes.
Now,
he doesn't own every use of it. The possession of the wood and the metal doesn't give him infinite.
No. But
you yourself agreed. If there is some other right, then he is restricted in what he can do with that, and that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but you're saying no, he's not restricted in his right. He's restricted in his actions. What you're saying is that if I own wood and metal and I fashion it into a new shape, that gives me more than the right to keep people from using my wood, my metal as they want. It gives me the right to keep them from using their wood and metal in a similar way. So you're saying that this intellectual property right arises from my arrangement of the patterns of these materials. So in other words, by me using my stuff in a creative new way, I gain a property right in other people's resources because I can stop.
No, you gain the right to reproduce that.
You understand? It's not reproducing. That's not how patent law. By the way, patent law has nothing to do with reproducing. That's copyright law. I'm not trying to get into the weeds with you, but patent law says that I can't independently come up with the same idea for my mousetrap because you came up with it first. Even if I didn't learn it from you, it's not reproducing. It's just using my stuff in a certain way. That's all patent law says, is that the owner of a patent can stop people from using their resources in a certain way. And by the way, he doesn't even have to have his own.
And that's the point. The ownership of those materials does not automatically. You have to make the case that if you own the material, that like the bullet and the gun example, which you agree with, in that case, so the same thing applies, and I've made the case this is also a material value. So you either, if you have to disagree with that, you have to say it's not a material value, which is what I think you're saying. That may be where the fundamental.
Let me try to clarify one thing, and then we can I'll let you close out. When I say you own a bullet and a gun, to me, ownership doesn't mean the right to use it any way you want.
But you just said that he has the right to use the wood and the metal any way he wants.
Yes, and that's because that's an implication. So ownership simply means the right to exclude people from using your stuff without your permission. That's all it means. So given that,
but there are limits to it that
no, there actually are no limits to it.
There are limits to every kind of property, and
No,
Just like you
I
can't.
disagree. I disagree.
Well,
This is the fun. There are no limits to there are limits to. This is why I said earlier there are limits to actions, not to property. So if let me just say this. You don't have to agree, but ownership of a gun means that I can prevent other people from using it. That's all it means. Okay. It's sort of like the free speech idea, which we sometimes say. Like if I have free speech, it doesn't mean I can go on your property and say what I want. It means I can. It means that if I speak on my property, I'm not violating your property rights.
but what you're saying is that there is a sphere of action that is
That's
protected.
actually that's metaphorical. I never use that concept because
But that's what you're saying, because we are having a
no,
discussion.
I'm not saying it. What I'm
Well,
saying is that ownership. No, listen, I know what I'm saying. I'll tell you what I'm saying. You don't need to say it for me. I'm saying that if I own property rights, okay, which means I own my body and I own other resources which I have property rights in, which gives me specifically, legally speaking, the right to exclude other people from using those resources without my permission, then that usually and by implication gives me the ability to use them by and large in what you might call a sphere of action without permission.
and that's the point is the same, that if the
It's not the
mousetrap,
same.
the,
It's
the
a
mousetrap,
nuanced.
the mousetrap owner. So you have to, if he has the rights with the material value of reproduction of
No,
that.
he doesn't. He doesn't own
But
it. You can't own.
but
That's
I,
the question begging to say you own a reproduction right. You
I
don't.
made the case that it's a material value, and if it's a material value, then there is a context in which there are rights associated with that. And
Well, and that's where we disagree.
when those come, yeah, when those come into conflict with the guy who owns the wood and the metal, then there's a, we have to
And they
realize
do, and they do come. I'm glad you
yes,
acknowledge they come into conflict, which
they
means
do.
that IP rights conflict with is just like wealth. Just like if you inflate money, you reduce the purchasing power of other people's money. Just like if you have positive welfare rights, they don't come for free. They come
But
at the expense of negative rights, and
but
your
rights
IP
come into
rights come at the
conflict.
expense of tangible property rights. So
No,
that's fine
no,
that you
no.
acknowledge that.
Rights come in. There are material values, and each one has a sphere where it is where which is controlled. The user, and so I'm saying that John Galt has his sphere, and the owner of the metal and the wood has their sphere. And now it's a matter of saying if both are valid, we have to figure out at what point does this
They're
matter.
but they're not both valid because they're incompatible, and so
They're both material values.
well,
But
I will take Ayn Rand and I will agree with her that you don't own an existent object that you rearrange. You only own the things you rearrange. And I will agree with Ayn Rand that the initiation of physical force against physical property is wrong.
But she
And
she
I
also says
do,
that you own the values
and
you
she was,
create.
that's why she was incoherent and
Well,
schizophrenic.
so,
And I
so
think I disagree with
I
Ayn
think you're
Rand.
cherry picking. You're taking parts of Rand you agree with, but
I
the more
am because she's, but
the
I
more
agree. I am. I
the
agree with you.
nuance
I am cherry picking because
the
Ayn Rand had an incompatible, incoherent philosophy. That's why she was an anarchist and a minarchist at the same time, and that's why she was against IP and pro IP at the
she was
same time.
never an anarchist. But
Oh,
that's
if you read Atlas Shrugged, Galt's Gulch is anarchist, and you know it. Come on,
nope. I don't.
where's the government in Galt's Gulch?
There was a judge.
Okay, well, judges, anarchists are not against law, dude.
There you
I
go.
mean,
So the point is,
no, it's
to
not there
say
I go. It's there you go.
to say that there's anarchy being recommended or advocated is a mistake. I mean, I don't see any other way around that. But anyway, I think it's been a great discussion, and I've
I
enjoyed it.
enjoyed it. I enjoyed it too. It was fun. You put up with my bullshit and my bellicosity, so you have a
Well,
strong temperament.
I think that you've been fair. I appreciate the candid sharing of ideas. You know, we don't have to agree on everything. I think we can still have discussions in the future. As I said, if you want to really engage on topics that are closer to your heart, which laws and stuff, I'll be happy to introduce you to a couple of people who are very much better at it than I am. I'm not the expert there, but I do believe I've made my case that there is a moral case for intellectual property. You may disagree, and people in your audience can certainly. I hope they've at least heard a different perspective, and if they want to engage with the ideas, they know where to go. I've also put my Facebook page up on the thing. Hopefully it's readable. I don't know if it is or not. Also my discuss handle, if anybody wants to see what I've been up to. And by all means, I would encourage anyone to reach out. And this whole thing about the anonymity part, Stephan, it's only because I have a professional life. I do things outside of this. I'm an entrepreneur. I do lots of other things. And I deal with people in that context that has nothing to do with political philosophy and so on. I think your car alarm just went off.
No, I'm outside. It's sorry. No, I totally appreciate that. And you notice I didn't pick on you about that.
No, I wanted to, if anyone's wondering about it, I just wanted to set the stage there that it's not that I would be happy to meet with you and have a open discussion. It's just that because I do a lot of other things where politics and philosophy don't enter the picture, I deal with employees and suppliers and customers, and we don't. I'm the old school type. We don't get into politics. We don't get into religion. We kind of do business, and that's where we create values for each other.
I understand it. All right, my brother. I enjoyed it, and let's chat later. Thanks a lot.
Talk to you soon.
Bye bye.